The Chicago Bears' preseason tie against the Miami Dolphins gave us a clearer picture of the pecking order in some of the team's biggest positional battles from training camp.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, I want to go through everything we learned in this Bears preseason tie against the Miami Dolphins, including the left tackle battle on display for all of us to see. Not a lot to be impressed with on either front. Also, same to be true for me at the cornerback position, where maybe the most important thing we got was an update on Jalen Johnson that I wasn't too encouraged about. But the real star of the day was Austin Booker. It gives us an update on the pass rushing battle behind Montez Sweat and Dio Dangbo. And I'd also like to touch briefly on the wide receiver rotation, the running back battles, and also that number 3 linebacker spot with another star of this Bears defense. But I think the position that we were watching pretty much from start to finish, that we got to see the most of in this game, was the left tackle battle, where Braxton Jones had one particularly bad play plus another one that wasn't great. And that's what everyone is paying the most attention to instead of the rest of the game when he was relatively fine. And then Ozzie Trapillo also not really standing out in any major way. And that's kind of what I'm left to take away from this, is like, not that one surpassed the other or gave us a very clear answer or direction, other than that, like, Braxton Jones is very clearly still in first place. He was the first left tackle out on the field. He played less than Ozzie Trapillo. Braxton Jones played with the Bears didn't use their starters, right? But like the players who started the game for the Bears, Braxton Jones was the first left tackle. And he played the entire first half up until the 2-minute drive, about 1:40 left in the half. That's when Ozzie Trapillo came in. Then Trapillo finished that last drive of the first half, then played almost all of the second half until like late in the game. They put Theo Benedette in at left tackle, but it still ended up being like something around like 24 snaps for Braxton Jones and then like 36 or so for Ozzie Trapillo, something around those numbers roughly in this game. And everyone noticed the play when Braxton Jones got beat to the inside on Tyson Bagent's touchdown throw. That was a pretty bad block, pretty bad play by Braxton Jones. Earlier in that drive, he was beat around the outside that ended up resulting in a Tyson Bagent sack. It wasn't that bad of a block. It was kind of one of those things where you push him down around the edge of the pocket and then Bagent's kind of flushed in another direction and it's a cleanup sack. So I didn't think it was like a particularly bad block by Braxton Jones, but it wasn't like great either. And those were kind of like the two main highlight or low light plays, I should say, for him. But like otherwise, playing against Dolphin starters, he was generally fine. For the first drive with some Dolphin starters out there, and then the backups, he was generally doing okay. I thought particularly on the play where he got beat to the inside pretty badly, he just looked not right, like looks not 100%. And after the game, he's never going to use that as an excuse, and he sounds very encouraged about where he's coming along. But also to me, the quote he gave also suggests that he's not quite there either. There's It wasn't part of the, like post-game press conference, if you will. So we don't have like audio we can play for you here, but I can read you sort of the main gist of it from Braxton Jones, where he talked about how, coming back from the injury was kind of a slow build-up process here. The full quote from Braxton Jones was, quote, "Each and every day has gotten a little bit better. I feel like in this 4 to 5 day block with joint practices, it has been the biggest improvement in terms of natural movement and feeling like myself. The joint practice was the point where I felt like I'm getting the hang of it. My body's getting used to it, and I'm feeling the new ankle. It's an upward trend. And to me, that is not saying he is mid-season form, right? He's getting closer to feeling more like himself. And again, upward trend. Like these are encouraging developments, but also to me, I think explains some of the stiffness of how he looked playing in this preseason game. And that's not to be like an excuse of like, oh, Braxton Jones is actually way, way better or anything. Like at the end of the day, he's going to be evaluated by what he does out in the field. And if he struggles like that, he's not going to be able to starting left tackle. But I think the point for me is like, he wasn't horrible, wasn't as good as we wanted, but like he's still getting better, right? I don't think this is 100% mid-season form, ready to go Braxton Jones. This is something close to that and getting closer to that and probably should still be playing better given how he described his current status. But like, I also can acknowledge that he's not the Braxton Jones that he was last season just yet. And so I'm kind of still willing to be patient and not just say, well, if that's what Braxton Jones is, what we saw today, then get him out of there. Like, I think there might still be more to Braxton Jones, especially because I wasn't really impressed by Ozzie Trapillo either. He didn't have as visible of mistakes, but he got beaten for a couple of pressures on the quarterback a couple of times in this game and wasn't, dominating folks in the ground game either. And what kind of concerns me about that is that he was going up against, a lot of third string players. And one of the things we talked about in the lead up to this game is like, if Ozzie Trapillo is competing to be your starting left tackle, then you need him to show you he's a starting caliber left tackle. And I think a starting caliber left tackle should pretty well dominate second and third string pass rushers, especially third string pass rushers. Like the players Trapillo was playing against in the third and fourth quarter are players that Trapillo, if he's a starting caliber player, should be a lot better than. And to me, it's not as though he was losing to them and getting beaten all the time, but he just wasn't moving guys in the running game, and he wasn't dominating in that regard. He wasn't swallowing up pass rushers as they went by him. Like it felt a little bit more average, which is not bad. I don't think Ozzie Trapillo had a bad game per se, but when you're going against other teams' backups, I want to see, if you're going to be a starter for me, I want to see you dominate. Kind of the way like Austin Booker, right, looks a little bit more like man amongst boys type of situation. Like that's the kind of thing that I was hoping to see from Trapillo in that spot, as a second round pick, as someone who's in that competition to start. Now, one preseason game, a couple dozen snaps is not the end all be all evaluation of either of these left tackles. And I think this battle is going to keep going on for another couple of preseason games and practices here in the coming days. But I also, along the offensive line, wasn't super in love with what I saw from some of the rest of the depth, especially on the interior. The starting right guard, Chris Glazer, seemed pretty horrible to me. He got beat early and often. Theo Benedict struggled against some of the starters early on that game, but settled in as the game went on there. I liked, Jordan McFadden as a sleeper to make this 53-man roster, but I just didn't feel like it felt like, Bajent and Keenum and Austin Reed were under pressure a lot against Dolphins backups, and that's just never a super great feeling from your backup offensive line, but you hope that never comes into play in the regular season. You hope those guys don't have to be out there and that your starters should be a lot better than that. So we're not going to get too worried just yet, but something to kind of keep tabs on while we're talking about this Bears offensive line. I do want to talk about the Bears pass rush and Austin Booker's big day, but I think that we got a more important update during this preseason game on the cornerback position. A couple of big things happening there with Deshaun Wright and Tyreek Stevenson playing in this game, Terrell Smith getting injured, and we got an injury update on Jalen Johnson as well. So I want to talk about this other big starting position battle on this Bears roster next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year, NFL kickoff is almost here. Preseason football is in the air, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. I play fantasy on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues. It's a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where each week the lowest scoring team gets eliminated until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this mode a try. Or if you're more into the classics, that's fine too. You can still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. The left tackle battle is the starting job wide open on offense. On defense, the most wide open starting battle is that other cornerback spot opposite Jalen Johnson. Tyreek Stevenson versus Nahshon Wright. Both players playing in this game a decent amount, early on, especially, and with Jalen Johnson out, then both those guys got to be your starters. And a lot of updates to go through here. But I thought overall, little underwhelming from Nahshon Wright. Growing concern about Jalen Johnson, and definitely need to be monitoring this Terrell Smith injury situation. Let's start with the guys that did play, and then we'll get to the guys that aren't playing. For me, not going to put too much stock in any preseason results, right? So I'm not, kind of take this all with a grain of salt, but I watched Nahshon Wright miss a couple of tackles. I mean, he was physical and got involved there, but he tried to tackle really high. It just wasn't particularly good form and mechanics there. And then there was a fourth down conversion where he was a little bit behind and beaten in coverage to the sideline. I don't mean oh my God, he had some horrible game and he's never going to have a chance to start, but it wasn't a particularly strong impression for me from him in this game. Now, Terrell Smith, on the other hand, almost had that pick six, right, where he jumped the route and got his hands on it, but just couldn't hold on to it. But otherwise, he was going full speed and he would have been running the other way. And he would have been somebody we talk about as the player of the game if he makes that play. But instead, he's someone we're talking about as a real injury concern, because he left this contest injured and was listed as doubtful to return. And so you wonder, as opposed to someone who's just listed as questionable, right? So that you think it's maybe not going to be that significant of an injury. We don't have any kind of updates on the severity or anything just yet. Only that it was a groin injury, and that feels like the kind of thing that can linger and and pop back up and cause problems and slow him down, even if he's out there or not. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be something that causes some real issues, or you just give it the right recovery for a day or two or a week or whatever, and then he's good to go. But I do wonder if his ability to jump that play, plus Nahshon Wright's minor miscues, we'll say, if that helps Smith get a little bit higher up into that cornerback rotation battle, or if it truly is kind of just Stevenson versus Wright. And I think the left tackle battle and the cornerback battle, to me, still both favor the incumbents, in the sense that I think if I had to predict right now, I think Braxton Jones is your week one starting left tackle, and I think Tyreek Stevenson is your week one starting cornerback opposite Jalen Johnson. But actually, let me revise that slightly, because if I had to predict right now, I think your week one starting cornerbacks are Tyreek Stevenson and Nahshon Wright. I'm feeling more and more doubt about Jalen Johnson's availability for week one. And the quote we got during the broadcast from assistant general manager Ian Cunningham about Jalen Johnson, I think was supposed to be encouraging, but I was left discouraged by it, because it wasn't quite answering the question in a way that I thought could have alleviated some concerns by answering it a little bit more directly. But Luke Canales is one of the sideline reporters, I believe, for the preseason broadcast. He had shared, and I'll read his quote for it as well. Well, he got the quote from Ian Cunningham, and the assistant general manager, Ian Cunningham, said, quote, "Jalen has been doing a really good job with his rehab. He's a consummate pro. He's in all the meetings. No concern there. But we're going to take it day by day, week by week, and whenever he is ready, he is going to be out there, and ready to go. And the thing about this quote that stands out the most to me is that Ian Cunningham was asked, will Jalen Johnson be ready for week 1? And in his answer, he never says yes. He never gives you any indication in the positive way that he'll be ready for week 1. Just that he's rehabbing well, he's a pro, he's working hard, and we're not concerned. But whenever he's ready, he'll be out there. So it's like, is he going to be ready by week 1? And the answer is, well, when he is ready, he'll be good to go. That feels to me like not a clear no either, but like it's very much in doubt for week 1. Because I think, obviously, like with an injury like this, you never know how long recovery is going to take. Bodies are different and different injuries and different human beings. But like, I think there's a different way Ian Cunningham could have answered that question if they were more confident in Jalen Johnson playing in week 1, right? Because I get that he's not going to come out and say definitively, yes, he will be back for week 1. They don't know that, and there's no advantage. They don't want, maybe they want other teams to not know whether Jalen Johnson will be out there or not. But you could come up if the question is, hey, will he be ready for week 1? You could say, we expect he should be good to go by week 1, or if he on his current timetable, we think week 1 is still a real possibility, or whatever the thing might be. There's a way to say to answer that in a sort of affirming a positive without saying definitively, yes, he will be there, but kind of say, yeah, we think he should be there, versus this isn't even giving you that, right? It's whenever he's ready, we trust that he'll be out there and good to go, which to me sounds like their way of saying, hey, if he's not back till week 3 or 4, he doesn't need a lot of a ramp up time. He can just, if he's cleared on a Wednesday, he'll play on that Sunday. Like that to me is what Ian Cunningham's quote was saying, is like, hey, he's prepping, so whenever he's healthy, we're going to be able to play him. It's not like he's going to need a week to ramp up. They're just going to trust him out on the field the first game he's able to play. And that to me implies that week 1 might not be the first game that he's able to play this upcoming season, which then might mean we don't really get an answer on this cornerback battle until Jalen Johnson's back, but you might have a couple of games without Jalen Johnson, which would be huge, trying to cover Justin Jefferson without Jalen Johnson. I mean, at least the good news in week 1 for that matchup against the Vikings is that wide receiver Jordan Addison has been suspended for the first 3 games, so the Vikings won't have their number 2 receiver, but I still would much rather have Jalen Johnson against Justin Jefferson than the combinations of Stevenson and Deshaun Wright, or maybe Terrell Smith, if he's able to step up and get a little bit deeper into this cornerback rotation there. While we're talking about the cornerback position, I also was a little disappointed with Josh Blackwell as the backup slot. He missed a couple of tackles in this game and gave up a couple plays that I kind of was expecting better from him at this stage of his career. Now, he's been around for 3 or 4 years in the league. I know he's an undrafted free agent, practice squad kind of guy, but like he's been a trusted backup and a great special teams player. I wanted a little bit better from him in this game at that spot. And of course, we haven't really seen Zay Frazier, the 5th-round rookie, hasn't gotten any action pretty much at all as he's been away from the team, dealing with some kind of personal issue. Same thing with Shamar Turner up on the defensive line, but his is an injury. But like a couple of these rookies, we're not getting as much action from. But I think we kind of know generally what the top of this cornerback depth chart is going to look like, and it's just a matter of the injury recovery timelines for Smith and Jalen Johnson, both of which I think are in more doubt now than they were when we started Sunday. So those to me, like that's why cornerback is a big one we need to keep a close eye on here, and then left tackle as well. But some other guys in position battles that are going to be key contributors, even if they're not a starting job. So I want to talk about Austin Booker's 3-sack day and what that means for the edge rushers. The wide receiver depth chart, having Luther Burden clearly a bit lower than we all thought he would be, plus Kyle Monangai at running back and some of these linebackers as well. A lot we can glean from this Bears preseason game that we'll touch on next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. We've all been there. You log on early and wait forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Well, live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Gametime comes in. I've got the Gametime app on my phone, and I use it all the time. I'm getting ready to go see My Chemical Romance at Soldier Field later this month, and I got my tickets on the Gametime app because they make getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. They've got their zone deals picks that find the best seats in the best section for you, all in pricing, so you're not seeing any hidden fees in your ticket purchase process. And the app shows you panoramic views from your seats before you buy the tickets, so you're not going to have any surprises. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Austin Booker had to be the breakout star of this preseason game with 3 sacks. And I don't want to take anything away from that performance and that no one else had 3 sacks in that game. And we don't see even a lot of Bears pass rushers in previous preseasons have a bunch of big 3-sack games. Like what Austin Booker did is not easy to do. It is hard to do and is impressive and a sign of growth and development and progress from Austin Booker. I also don't want us to get carried away with dominating backups in a preseason game, right? And I think there's both things can be true, right? Like, it doesn't make it not impressive because it was against backups, but it also doesn't mean he's going to have 3-sack games against starters in the regular season, right? It can be both of these things. I think it showed great motor, great effort, great hustle, great intensity, and some development of pass rush moves for sure. But I also know that this Dolphins offensive line is a weakness for them, and they don't have great offensive line depth. And so it isn't necessarily replicable in the same way to the regular season. Like not that he's not going to, that doesn't mean anything, right? I'm trying to be careful here of like, let's enjoy it and be excited about it and recognize it for the value that it does bring and not assign too much value to it for Austin Booker. Because keep in mind, he was very clearly lower on the depth chart to start this game. When the Bears brought their starting lineup of defensive players, the backups that they chose to start in this game, the first team defensive line was Dominic Robinson at one end, and then the veteran Tano Passignon, the free agent they signed at the start of training camp. Those two were the starting defensive ends in this preseason game. Austin Booker didn't get in the game until a few drives in. Right? He started rotating with Robinson, and then eventually Passignon was done, and then Booker takes over. But like when we think about like the depth chart behind Montez Sweat and Dio Dengbo, clearly Booker is third behind Passignon and Dom Robinson. Right? They could only start 2 of them in this game, and they chose not to start Austin Booker. That was telling you that he's a little bit behind, or was a little bit behind in their eyes, where Dominic Robinson and Tano Passignon were. Now, maybe a 3-sack performance against the Dolphins means next preseason game, Booker's starting. And I certainly think it is obviously going to be valuable in his evaluation and move him up a little bit in the eyes of the coaching staff. But I don't know that it's going to like drastically change everything they thought about Austin Booker just because of one great game, but one game is, at the end of the day, all it ended up being. And so that to me is something we're going to keep monitoring, because if Dominic Robinson made a couple plays, didn't have the 3 sacks, but like he was a factor on that defensive line. Tano Passignon, as well as a veteran, didn't play as much there, but you're starting to see a little bit more reason to find some kind of confidence in those guys. I still would like more pass rushing depth, more experienced pass rushing depth. I still have question marks about that position group in particular. But this is the kind of encouraging start you'd like to see, but I need to see it sustain against maybe some better offensive linemen against the Buffalo Bills, and do it across multiple games and work your way up more and more before I can feel like, all right, they really do for sure have something major here. Same thing is true for me with the other star of the defense, Noah Sewell. Made some really nice plays in the running game. Not easy to do even against backups. He deserves credit for showing up and flashing and playing well. I also think it's a preseason game against backups, right? Like, we didn't see Noah Sewell tested a ton in coverage, for example, where his lack of speed might be a little bit more of a factor. Now, he's the number 3 linebacker, mostly going to play in base defense, so you're not asking him to do as much in coverage, so he should be fine. But like, it's not as though Noah Sewell is now some gem that's going to be the next star Chicago Bears linebacker. Like, he looked like a very serviceable player that you're not worried about him being on the field if you need him to be. And Hippolyte looked pretty good too. But like, we don't need to get carried away with them either, but we can appreciate and value and enjoy really impressive performances when we see them. At the running back position, I was really impressed by Kyle Monangai. Really looked the part in terms of physical, tough runner who bounces off of contact, had a couple of nice runs in this game and was not easy to bring down. He looked to me like a guy who is very clearly ready to be the number 2 running back, if they're going to give it to him. I mean, Roschon Johnson's dealing with what I think a foot injury, if I remember right, or some kind of injury that kept him out of this game, and we'll see exactly where that works. But Monangai was not very good in pass protection, got blown up a couple of times. And so when we start to think about what the running back field rotation looks like, Monangai's not going to do much on third downs, and DeAndre Swift is your starting running back. And so that means Monangai's role then would be first and second downs when DeAndre Swift needs a break. Right? I don't think this is going to be the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, where they're both getting 150 plus carries. I think it's going to be more of a 3-headed monster type of attack where, Swift's the starter, and then maybe Roschon becomes your third down running back if he's the better pass protector of the group. Like maybe that's the role for him, or maybe, heaven forbid, Travis Homer, third down back, pass catching and blocking back out of the backfield. I mean, I don't like it, but it's not going to be Monangai on third downs, and DeAndre Swift can't play literally every down. So how they try and parse that out is going to be interesting, and a lot of it's going to depend on how quickly Roschon Johnson can get healthy and really get back into this competition, because it feels like his spot on the depth chart is slipping away slowly but surely. But a lot of ball game left, a lot of preseason left. I was also surprised clearly how low Luther Burden was on the Bears wide receiver depth chart with how they approached this game. That early on in the game, your starting 2 wide receivers were Tyler Scott and Devin Duvernay. And when those 2 were your receivers, Luther Burden only came in as the third receiver in the slot with those 2 guys on the outside. But anytime there were 2 receivers on the field for about the first couple of drives, it was just Scott and Duvernay. Like Burden was very clearly behind them in the Bears, internal coaching depth chart there. Duvernay left after like 14 plays, and then he was just done for the day. And then Luther Burden stepped up to that point. But very clearly, like, your wide receiver depth chart is DJ Moore, number 1, Rome Odunze, number 2, Olamide Zaccheaus, number 3, Devin Duvernay, number 4, Tyler Scott, number 5, Luther Burden, number 6. Like, that is the order they showed us in the preseason game. Doesn't mean that order is locked in, and certainly Burden had some nice plays here and there to continue to grow and show more of what he could do. But like, this wasn't the case of like Ben Johnson trying to hide Luther Burden, right? Or trying to, not have other teams see what they're going to be doing with Luther Burden. He played plenty of snaps. Like, he was used quite a bit, but he just wasn't with the quote unquote starters. Like, he wasn't one of their top 2 wide receiver choices to begin this game. And that's a little bit concerning. Like, for comparison, Colston Loveland as a rookie played in this game. He played like 6 snaps. And they said, you're good. All set. Saw everything we made that catch, had a block or 2, got him out of the game. Easy done, good to go. Both guys missed the same amount of time of the offseason, right? It's not just like, oh, well, Luther Burden's farther behind. No, they both had to do the same amount of catch up, but they clearly trust Colston Loveland more and are more confident in where he is right now than Luther Burden. And so I think we need to keep lowering our expectations for what Luther Burden's role is going to look like in the regular season. Like, Zaccheaus is going to be that number 3 for sure. And then it's just a matter of, does Luther Burden become the 4? Do they have a package for Luther Burden? How they want to work that out is going to be something that we'll see if that role grows and develops over the course of the rest of this preseason. But you can be sure we're going to watch all these games closely and update you on all these position battles and more right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, check out the Locked On Bets podcast. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily baseball locks and can't miss football futures. So find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Then come on back tomorrow. Make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.